My name is Rhonda Thompson Brown. I'm doing my persuasive speech for my communications class. I have two people in my audience, my daughter and my husband. You show yourself so my professor knows that you're here. Okay. They are sick at the moment, so bear with us. My speech is going to be on selective breeding. And the purpose of this is to inform my audience about the treatment of chickens on chicken farms that breed to supply demand rather than care about the health of the chicken or the quality of their lives. This is called selective breeding. Now, when a chicken grows, the normal time that it used to grow in when it was in the 1950s was approximately 90 days. But today, in 2010, the chicken breeding farms do it within 45 days. And this report will explore that. The natural life growth process of a chicken has actually been cut in half. And what we're going to look at is whether or not this is beneficial to us as a result. Chickens are being grown so fast that their legs cannot support their weight, along with the other health concerns on behalf of the chicken. Many times the conditions of the chicken farms are deplorable. This report, I was quite shocked by the things that I found out that the chickens endure. Recent television broadcasts have exposed the truth about chicken farms, along with several documented cases about the cruelty that the chickens are going through. Now, the background of the normal chicken growth process, like I stated before, in the 1950s, from chicken farmers that bred chickens, allowed about 90 days for a chicken from the time it was hatched to the time it went to slaughter. And within that time frame, the chicken has to have a fair amount of light and direct exposure to sun, and it has to have a certain mix of meal that it eats to be considered healthy. Now, today's standards, though, that is not happening. Healthy food and grain for chicken has even changed over the years. Chickens are not being fed healthy cornmeal anymore. I had found out through this report that there was a employee that worked for a major chicken company, and she discovered that the chickens were being fed roxarsine, which actually is an organic arsenic compound. And they were feeding this to the chickens, and it turns out that over 70% of all the broiler chickens grown in the U.S. are fed roxarsine. And according to a 2000 article published in the journal Poultry Science, roxarsine prevents the growth of microscopic intestinal parasites called coccidia that frequently infect livestock. And it produces the added bonus of better growth, which equals bigger chickens. So as we are eating these chickens, 70% of them are being fed an organic compound of their feed that contains arsenic, which will kill us if we were to ingest that. And subsequently, the girl who did this report, she became sick. That's how she found out it was arsenic. And just by feeding the chickens, she became lightheaded and she became nauseated, and she began to question what was in the chicken feed, and she was told to mind her own business. So that is quite a means of thought as we're eating our chickens, whether or not we want to ingest that same arsenic that they're being fed. And several other reports were done, one by Dr. Toby Knowles of Bristol University's Division of Food and Animal Science. They assessed the walking ability of 51,000 chickens within 176 flocks. The study found that on an average of 40 days, over 27.6% of birds showed poor locomotion, and 3.3% were almost unable to walk. Dr. Knowles said that broiler chickens have been subjected to intense genetic selection, or that is also called selective breeding. And in the past 50 years, broiler growth rates have increased by over 300%, from 25 grams per day to 100 grams per day. So if you can just imagine where a chicken that normally took 90 days to grow naturally is now being forced to grow within 45 days and is given this growth compound that will help the mass of the chicken. But what's happening is the chicken is growing so fast that the legs can't even support the chicken. And I actually saw a television broadcast not too long ago about chicken farming, and it was quite sad to see the chickens weren't even able to hold up their own weight, and most of the time they laid down because their legs couldn't support the weight of their bodies because it was growing too fast. Another thing to consider is the conditions of the coop or the farms that the chickens are raised in. They're very overcrowded. There's several thousands of chickens per square feet, and there's a lot of death, disease, and sickness among the chickens, which would add to contamination as they go to the slaughterhouses. And one thing that was of concern that I've never thought about before was the actual process of slaughtering these chickens. These chickens are not given any kind of anesthesia, and they are placed into hot scalding water. Many times they try to cut their throats first to alleviate the pain, but they don't worry about how they're going to cut their throats, so many times they are actually alive when they go into the scalding water. And you know, that is just a deplorable state to be in, and right now there is no formal law for the humane protection of chickens as there is with other animals. But the most important impact is the impact of the dollar. It seems to be that the supply for chickens is far more important than the quality of the chicken's health and or our health as a result. Now, some things that we can do, what we can do is we can be selective in the chicken products that we decide to buy. We can choose not to buy chickens that have been selectively bred and grown in half the normal time. Just by looking at the plumpness of the chicken, you can determine the plumper the chicken is, and it can make you actually sit there and think, what did this chicken endure to get to your plate in half the time? So you can resist that urge to buy that plump chicken. Also, you can choose to buy farm-raised organic chickens, and by doing that, you're not only helping the treatment of that chicken, but you're actually helping the employment of the small farmer, which nowadays is practically non-existent. So making better selections of the chicken that we eat will result in better health for our body as well as the health of the chickens. So today we've learned that the plumpest chickens may not be the best selection. Selective breeding seems to be selective in who it profits, and do we really want to eat chicken that's been forced to grow in half the time? I found a quite astonishing report by a Baltimore Sun reporter who actually looked at what would happen if we compared children to chicken, if our children grew up in half the time, where we consider a child to be somewhat of an adult at 18, what would happen if we consider that same child to be an adult at 9 years old? In effect, that's what we're doing with the chickens. The normal growth rate is 90 days, but yet we're cutting it down to 45 days. So does that mean that sooner is better? Does that mean that we should not be selective in what we choose to eat? I challenge you to reconsider buying the fullest and the plumpest package of chicken breasts or drumsticks the next time you go into the store, and consider just exactly what this chicken has endured to get to your plate in half the time.